Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, everyone, and welcome my special guest for today, Myra Krien. She is a renowned international dance artist, performer, choreographer, and dance educator. She is known for her elegant and graceful presence, as well as her stylistic versatility in traditional, Egyptian, and classic and contemporary fusion forms of dance. She's based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she directs her school of dance called Pomegranate Studios. She also has a nonprofit youth mentorship program called SEED, Self-esteem, Empowerment, and Education Through Dance. And if that's not enough, she also is the esteemed Mosaic Dance Company. In 2019, she was the recipient of the Santa Fe Mayor's Award for Excellence in the Arts, and she has performed on some of America's most prestigious stages, toured internationally, performed for PBS and Japanese television, and she has been reviewed by national publications such as the esteemed Dance magazine. And I am proud to call her one of my instructors as well. And thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, no, thank you, Lori. And I'm so glad you come and dance with us. It's so amazing.
Through the magic of the internet.
Through the magic of the internet and the blessing of the pandemic. I mean, there were some blessings in the pandemic, and some of them had to do with us connecting outside our physical walls. And I have really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I connected to you through Yeva Chisholm, who I knew independently, but she also helped coach me through my podcast development a year ago. And I know that she has been a treasure in your life as well.
She has been.
Yes. So is there anything else you'd like to add to let the audience know about yourself?
No, I mean, that seems like a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And I just marvel watching you. You know, you talk about through the pandemic, and we were going to focus today on creativity and the muse of creativity and inspiration. And I know that you've used that as a dance educator and performer your whole life, but really had to pivot during the pandemic, because I think you mentioned one time about just how many dance studios closed for good reason, because people weren't physically together.
Yeah, I think that it would be very difficult for people to understand how delicate, the environment of a dance studio is, and how kind of at risk they are all the time. So during the pandemic, I watched as over 100 dance studios that I was aware of closed one right after the next. And it was like an avalanche. And I felt like maybe it was coming for me, And it was heartbreaking for me to watch, because I know how they are absolute works of love, and they require such devotion and such sacrifice. And just knowing that it's very hard to restart, to reopen once something like that has happened in your life. So I mourned for, all of those people losing those businesses, because I just knew how much they'd given to them, and just how hard it would be for them to return to that.
Yes, but you survived.
I did.
And
Somehow I survived. I'm in my 28th year now.
Congratulations.
Thank
The,
you.
the dance studio was always my haven
Yes.
for connecting with myself, for spirituality, for community, for the creative process. And I'm wondering if you might speak a little bit about how the creative process has been active in your life.
Well, I love, first of all, that you have an intimate experience of the dance studio as a haven. And I feel like, well, over the years, many of my students a long time ago just started to call this place sanctuary, and that caught on, and really through nothing having to do with me particularly, but it just, I really think that they are like that for people, and it is one of the motivating forces in my life is that people feel that way about this place, and I feel the importance of that in their lives, and therefore, have been willing to be that resilient and to continue in the face of what often has seemed like unsurmountable odds because of the effect that it has for people, that it is sort of sanctuary for them, and how much it offers them on a spiritual level and in terms of community and just on so many levels. um Creativity has always been a big part of my life. I come from a very unusual family and a very creative family, and I fortunately for me got to grow up around so many creative people that it was sort of the water I was allowed to swim in, and so it
Mm.
just didn't seem unusual to me in any way that that was a part of my life. Um, I do think though that it took me a really long time to come into myself as a creative being. And I probably feel I'm 62 this year on Halloween, which is my birthday. I feel like I'm finally coming into the truest part of my artistic voice, and that it's been growing over all of these years. But it just takes such a long time, I feel, for us to come into the confidence of ourselves as artists and voices, find our voices and develop our voices. And we live in such an immediate culture, like everything has to happen right away. But
Right.
the process of art is very different from that. It's just and perhaps because of that, such an antidote to the time that we live in. Perhaps that's why it feels like such medicine. Um, and I think through art, the creative process is such a rich soil, to plant ourselves in. I mean, it's a way that we can um, go through a very loving process of knowing ourselves. That's at the Delphic Oracle, know thyself. And I feel like art is a wonderful way for us to really without it being, well, this term is bandied about, I think, unnecessarily unnecessary amounts, but without it becoming so narcissistic, that it's always about us. Art allows us to see ourselves outside of ourselves by creating this objective point of view, and then also allows us to share that with others and find the points where we all come together there. It's the sharing of that is so profound, because we realize that these things are connective points of our humanity. And maybe we find parts of ourselves in facets of it. And by examining the other facets of what we see in front of us, we learn so much about the rest of the world around us. But I also think it's a deeply connective tool, the process of creativity, to connect us to the earth, to connect us to each other, to connect us just to the world around us. I often feel like, in spite of what I just said about it being kind of personal and being able to see ourselves better because of it, I also think it has nothing to do with me. Like
Mhm.
I just show up to it, and I show up to it, I show up to it, I show up to it, I open myself to it, and then it comes into me like, like a very pleasant visitation. you know
Yes.
and I, through that, am able to explore maybe other realms of the sort of mythic body and the spiritual bodies and the emotional bodies. And by that I mean that oftentimes I feel like our emotional bodies are not even our own, like they really can come from all the energies that surround us. We're so permeable,
Mhm.
and I feel like the ideas for all my art come through that permeable body. It's like
Mhm.
on all the different levels of myself, my thoughts, my emotions. And I say mine as if I have ownership over them, but I really don't think I do. I think that they're collective things, and they
Mhm.
move through me, and then I just move them out.
A moving company.
Yeah.
Transport
Well,
system,
movement. Yeah, movement. It's just
truly.
like water, making like water.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Receiving
You have
and
so many rich things you talked about. And the thing that kept I saw in my mind, I mean, everything you said, I agree with, that it's personal, that it's transpersonal, that it's community, that it's of us, but not, it comes through us. And then it creates something that's relatable. But then also there's always that tweaking. It's like when you read a novel or you see a play or a dance or music, and it moves you to tears or to some kind of a emotional response because you relate. But then there's a twist, oh, always, almost always a twist where you're like, I haven't considered that, or that's not me, or oh, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And it brings something fresh in that sense. And 10 people seeing the same performance have totally different responses to it. So, but the thing that kept coming to me visually was the art. And that's something that the audience may not know, is that you have an incredible ability to not only work collaboratively with staging and dancers and your community and where you travel and doing workshops for people before, during, after, when you are in residence, but also the art on the stage, the lighting, the colors, so if could you speak a little bit about maybe the tarot deck or other things that you've used inspirationally, creatively with other creative people?
sure. And I'd also love to add, just because it's such a huge part of what I do, the costuming.
Yes. Oh
Costuming is
my.
such a big part of it, and I design and make all the costumes, and as well as being the choreographer and the director and the teacher and all those things, and the fundraiser and the organizer and the producer, yeah, all the hats. But
The travel agent.
the travel agent. But yeah, okay, so I'd love to tell the story. This is just one. Okay, first let me preface this by saying, um, I mean, I have created well over 80, maybe far more than that, maybe over 100 now of these kinds of shows in my career. And by these kinds of shows, I mean large theatrical productions. There are hundreds upon hundreds of other shows that I've produced, but the large scale theatrical dance productions. And it's my favorite thing to do. It's my favorite work to engage in. And just because of the grand scale and the way that it involves all those things that you just mentioned. And yeah, and because it's really a venue for storytelling. And I really consider myself a storyteller. I think it took me a long time to understand that about myself as an artist, that that's really my focus. All these other things were just ways that I could get to that. They
Mhm.
were the medium and the media through which I was going to tell these stories. And so lately in my career, much more recently, I've been using, like I used to build these suites of dances that would tell smaller stories, but now I've been quite devoted to telling stories over an hour and a half long period of time. So a full theatrical production will tell one story from beginning to end. So I've been doing that more and more lately. And then I have a friend, a very close friend, who's a phenomenal artist who I've known for over 3 decades. And her name is Alexandra Eldridge. And she had, for many years, for probably 12 years, been working on a tarot deck with this poet, Tony Barnstone, who is the professor of literature, poetry and literature, I think, at Whittier College. And he had met Alexandra and asked her if she would illustrate this deck. And she agreed. Over the pandemic, they got a publisher. And so this then put a deadline to it. And she spent maybe 10 hours a day painting every single day until the deck was complete. So I would go over and visit her, and I was watching this come into being, and then and enjoying that. And then the pandemic, kind of came to a close. The deck was published, and they were going to do an opening here in Santa Fe. And I came over and I sat with her and I said, when I look at these paintings, I realized that I could, out of my costume closet, very easily bring these characters to life. Would you like me to come and do some of that at the opening? And she said, oh my gosh, would you? That would be amazing. Well, I ended up not being able to do that. I got called away. And but after that, I had ordered one of the decks. And I was alone at home, and I opened the deck, and I'm not kidding, Lori, it was like opening a box of light.
Mm.
And I got chills, and I thought, something's happening here. It was so magical. I really felt like I had stepped into a different realm. And I have a lot of tarot decks. I used to years ago be really into tarot and read a lot, and I've had a lot of different decks, and I've read a lot of different books about it. And anyway, so this experience was really powerful. And as I was going through the cards, I started seeing full dances come to mind, just come right through me, just like sprang before me. And I thought, this is going to be a show. I can feel it. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a show. And so I went to Alexandra and I said, how would you feel about that? And she said, oh my gosh, I would just be overjoyed, delighted, like, please, please, please do it. So then I contacted this man, Tony, who I had not met yet, and wanted to make sure he liked the idea as well and was, interested in that. So then I met with Alexandra and I went through all the major arcana, and I decided I wanted to do the journey of the Fool, as the Fool is transformed by the Fool's journey through the major arcana. And so I did that. And I also looked into ways to bring the colors that she had used and some of the symbolism of the minor arcana onto the stage. And, just a lot of details. I went into a lot of detail from looking at her images and then bringing that to life through the costuming and the lighting, and the different things that got projected, different images that got projected. We projected the cards, her paintings, the images of her paintings onto the back wall. And then sometimes, like there were things that were in the cards that we would project on the floor, the dance floor, and also on the sides of the cards, that kind of thing. So we talked a lot about that. Peter Holt helped me with that, and he was amazing during that process. And he's just insanely talented and good listener, good collaborator,
Yeah.
And so we, created all of that. And then I had a long conversation with a dance company that I have been closely associated with over, I don't know, a couple of decades now, and asked them if they wanted to embody the main characters. And I invited a few other professionals that I've worked with before who I really enjoy working with, and just started creating all the work, for the show. And we toured it all over the country, which was really exciting. I'm actually planning a new tour right now for my newest production called The Return. And yeah, it was just, it was an incredible experience. It was a tremendous amount of work, but it was very successful. I mean, not
Yes.
monetarily successful, not successful in that sense, but successful in every other sense, you know. Um, I felt so successful artistically. I mean, we just received standing ovations everywhere we went. We were sold out almost everywhere we went, which was wonderful. Um, and it just was a very gratifying, deeply satisfying kind of experience.
What a journey you were taken on. A box of light. I mean, what a great image and construct and experience to open that and you'd seen it, but when you got it in your hands, something clicked and it took you on a journey. So for those who don't know anything or very much about tarot or tarot, as they say, what is the major and minor arcana, if you might don't mind?
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I mean, I see, yeah, you can pronounce it, by the way, you can pronounce it either way. You can pronounce it tarot, which is more how I pronounce it. That's how Alexandra pronounces it and many other
Mhm.
people that I know. But if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's pronounced tarot.
Yeah.
So you can hear it either way, but you can pronounce it either way, apparently. I understand there's been a lot of research done on that. But anyway, let's see. The major arcana, the way I view it is from a Jungian perspective. I
Mhm.
see the cards as archetypes, and these are the sort of life stages that we go through. Like the emperor seen as, structure, father figure, things like this. The empress, mother figure. The magician is the trickster to me. The high priestess, all things that are created from the universe. I don't know, I could go on and on, but I do see them.
Mhm.
I see the major arcana as both life stages, like times of life, phases that we all go through that are universal to all of us. And then I also see them representing, certain forces that come in and out of our lives at different times. Um, but they're archetypal, right? So the archetypes have all these different facets to them. So it's how this facet in me is connecting to the facet that is showing itself right at this moment from the archetype. And
Mhm.
these two are reflective, they're mirroring to each other. And that is, how I interface with that and find it useful. Like I always think of the cards as like a still pool in which I am looking, and
Mhm.
it reflects back to me so I can see what's happening more easily. So it's not, I don't think of them as necessarily predictive.
Okay.
I think of them more as reflective. Um, and the minor arcana is, I feel, really in support to all of that. Like, each their four suits, right? This was originally a playing deck, and this started 400 something like that. Like it's been a very long time that we've had these cards, and they were a playing deck. And so then it moved out of that into sort of these greater, you know, interpretations. But of course, the four suits, right? So you have the cups, which are about your emotional body. You have the
Mhm.
swords, which are about your mental body. You have the discs, which is the physical, right? Uh, and what's the other one? I'm not wands, right? The
Mhm.
wands. Yeah. So all of those four are interacting, with the larger archetypes of our lives and kind of fill in, like if you get, a certain number of swords, it's going to represent maybe you're caught up in your mind in a very difficult way. The card is going to kind of speak to the landscape, right, that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tied to the numbers, like you said, a playing card, yeah, deck of cards. So yeah, the numbers, and then the major arcana is more like the kings, queen. Yeah.
Right.
Joker.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the numbers are very important too, because of numerology. There's a connection there as well.
Yeah.
And you just see that all these great symbolic, or the symbols, these really powerful symbols that have been with humanity for, centuries are a part of this. And I think that's why it has such longevity for people,
Mhm.
why people still use it as a tool, you know.
And so
Just like
much of our
astrology.
major archetypal film and theater draws from it, and
Oh, yeah.
young, so like Star Wars and stuff like that, they like the major battles of good and evil and the king and the queen and corruption and death and transformation. These are huge themes. So I love that you were able to use it in all these variations on a theme, the poetic writing, the painting, the conglomeration of all of it, the light in the box, the imagery of the dance, the bringing in other dancers, the staging, lighting, costuming. Just it's incredible, incredible. So I will have all the contact information in the program notes so people can find you and the deck and all of this, and hopefully your future shows. But I'm wondering, so let me just share a brief story with you. You don't know this already, and I think you'll be fine with me sharing it. Last night I was thinking about your name, and I was looking out at the stars at night, and I said, "Miracle, Myra." And I swear, a shooting star came across the sky, and I just felt this sense of just connection and beauty. So there's something here about the cosmos
Mm,
and connection and your name and the idea of miracle that I offer. And I don't
that's
know
so
how that
sweet.
is like connected to what you've been talking about, but there's something here that I needed to share that was such a specific moment.
Well, I love that. And I'm actually the fifth Mira in my family,
Oh,
and it's a family name, and it's spelled unusually. It's Myra, but the Y is pronounced like a double E.
mm-hmm.
And it's from the Sanskrit, and of course it means always like reflective, but the base meaning has to do with light. So, my name means bringer of the light. And interestingly, to tie that into the tarot, a long time ago, I did my life soul, like you do the numerology on your date of birth. And I'm the Hierophant. And so I looked up the Hierophant and I was reading it. And in the Hierophant, it says, bringer of the light.
Oh my.
I know. And I thought, wow,
Well,
there's
you brought the
definitely
light. You brought the light in the sky last night.
so
Just
beautiful. I love
thinking,
that.
yeah, thinking of your name, there was a
Thank you.
coordination there. That's so
Yeah.
lovely. Wow. Light is going to be in the title of this somehow. I'll make sure I
That's
add light
beautiful.
in. Well,
I
we're
love
coming to
that.
the end of our precious time together, and I'm wondering, is there anything else you'd like to share? Intuition or something from the heart or
Yeah,
helpers and guides?
I'd like to share that I feel like my work has really become more focused and devoted. I think it was always kind of there in some ways, but more focused and devoted to our animate and somatic relationship to the world around us, and really trying to inspire people through art to engage in that more. And so that's really a big focus of like the new performance, The Return. It's a big focus of that show, and I can't wait for the film to be up so people can watch it. But also, just all the work that I'm making now is always going to be in some way, um, you know, centered more around that and the connective tissue of that, and trying to just, in my own tiny little way, ring out through, art and creativity, which I think just it comes through a different door for us, and so I love that about it, and so I really want to put some emphasis on, you know, on those connections. So
Is there a reason for the name, The Return?
yeah, the return is based on the ancient Minoan civilization, and about five concepts of that I feel if we were to think more that way, like I'm privileged to know a handful of really, kind of movers and shakers of the environmental movement. And when I've talked to them about what's it going to take, every single one of them, independent of each other, has said to me, a shift in consciousness.
Yes.
And so I've been thinking a lot about that. Like, what does that look like? And so this show is to try to inspire people to maybe 5 points of shift in consciousness. Um, and so the show is about that. And one of these five is death and how
Mhm.
we perceive death and our relationship to death. And
Mhm.
in the Minoan culture, they saw death very differently than we do. It was a celebration. It
Mhm.
was a return to where we came from so that we can return here again. They really think of everything in a spiral. So time was another one of these concepts. How do we think about time? Like
Mhm.
if time is linear, it's very predatory. But if time is a spiral, it has an upward moving spiral. It has a very different feeling to it. And so that was very much a part of the relationship to their ideas about death. And so they never mourned a person's death. It was really something that they celebrated and felt like that person passing away was making room for new to come in, and how important that is. And they were doing an important part of the ritual of living. And so I thought, oh yeah, if we could feel very differently about time, we could feel differently about death. Another one of the five is ecstatic sexuality. Like if
Mhm.
we really looked at the, the fabric of our sort of Puritan roots here in this country, for sure, has a very different relationship to sexuality. Whereas in Minoan culture, it was very ecstatic, and also another of the five is this sort of idea of a balance of masculine and feminine energies, that is very egalitarian. And they didn't have marriage. Women were not thought of as possessions or
Mhm.
to be, owned. In fact, their whole relationship to ownership in their culture was very different. So I think for us to think differently about just possession and ownership and property and all of those things in general would change the way we think about the environment. And our relationship to the feminine would change very differently, our relationship to the environment, because of course land, we always think of the earth, we always think of the land in terms of feminine principle. And so anyway, I would like to see us bring balance, to
Yeah.
those things. So these are just some of the things I tried to address through dance
In 90 minutes
in 90 minutes.
with costume and lighting. How beautiful and how profound. Um,
Uh,
yeah, I remember seeing the Buddhist um, monk Thich Nhat Hanh, and
mhm,
he was asked, what about our state of, the earth and our
mhm,
future? And he said, we're facing a deep crisis and we don't have time to change it mechanically.
mm-mm.
What will save us is a change in consciousness, and it can happen now.
It can always happen now. That's the beauty of it. The only thing I will say about that is, um, my grandfather's Alan Watts, and I posted something of his this morning,
Mm.
and I'm always you know, remembering is what I want to say. I'm always remembering that he was a profound activist for, you know, the environment. And he really had beautiful things to say about, kind of our relationality, to the greater world around us. And but he was talking about that in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. And I'm thinking, God, here we are. And yeah, what is it going to take? So I'm hoping that I can knit my voice to all kinds of other voices, and we can ring out in greater resonance and larger, vibratory resonance, and greater harmony with each other until finally, that becomes the normative voice. And anyway, that's my commitment to that. And I love that you said that about, what he had to say, that it could just happen at any time. It can happen now. So
Right.
yeah, let's make it happen now.
Yes, I love it. Oh, what a great way to end on a positive note. And I thank you so much from my heart
Mm,
for what you're bringing to the world and doing it in a way that maybe audience members will have never heard of Minoan culture or understand anything about how to say tarot or tarot.
right.
But the messages come through, and they resonate out. And so thank you so much for that. And for employing
Thank you.
dancers and artists.
Yeah.
We need
Thank
each
you so
other in this
much.
world. Yeah,
We do. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing. This is really beautiful. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.